Well, hello. This is the Joshua Bible Study, Part 2. I'm doing chapters 6 through 10, which you can break down as the battles with the Canaanites. So, we left off on Joshua chapter 6. So now Jericho, by this point, they are shut up to the point of no one went in or out because they had a fear for the children of Israel. The Lord tells Joshua that I gave you the city. Now march around the city once for 6 days. 7 priests shall, it says, have 7 trumpets from ram's horns, and do this by the ark of the covenant. The 7th day march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. It's basically a battle march. Then a long blast from the horn. Then all the people shout out, the wall of the city shall fall, and every man shall come straight up before him. Then Jesus tells the priests to take up the ark of the covenant, 7 priests, 7 trumpets, before the ark of the Lord. To the people, march around the city. Let him who is armed go before them. Joshua tells the people, you shall not shout unless I say to. So all that was said came to happen. Once Joshua said shout, they did, and the city was doomed, pretty much. Only Rahab the harlot, and all the people in her home shall live, for she hid us. Abstain from the accursed items, or the things, how the Bible describes around there, lest you become accursed by it, because you will. They had been warned by this point so many times from Moses now to Joshua, what the Lord had told them about accursed items. But all the silver and gold, the vessels of bronze and iron, are consecrated to the Lord. So they're basically to take these and to give them to the Lord, not keep it for themselves. They are the treasury of the Lord. So once they shouted, the wall fell. They destroyed all but Rahab's family and her, and the gold and the silver and the bronze and the iron. They took them outside the city and they burned it to the ground. This was called the destruction of Jericho. And that's pretty much a way that we can wrap up chapter 6. So then we get to chapter 7. So this chapter, the first part you can count it as the defeat of Ai. So Achan, the tribe of Judah, had went for the accursed items. The Lord was angry. It don't seem like it looked like it took them real long for them to turn away from God by this point, I guess is the way I could describe it. It really don't seem like it took that long, because it's like as soon as they got to this town, this guy took some of the accursed items for himself. So Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is beside Beth-aven, told them to go up and spy out the land. 2,000 to 3,000 men went. Do not worry, all the people here are few. So they fled from them of fear still, though. They had no faith. So 36 of them were killed during their fleeing. Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to pray. He pleads to God, almost like Moses did. I feel he is feeling something like Moses did by this part. Like he's now realizing, wow, the weight of the burden of trying to be the leader of these people, to be the intercessor, to talk in between the Lord and them. Crazy, man. Just think, because, now the Holy Spirit is free to all of us. But the next part is the sin of Achan. So the Lord tells Joshua, I can't be with you till you remove these accursed items from the camp, basically, is what he's telling him. So he got up tomorrow, and he sanctified himself before the Lord. Every tribe, the one who is guilty, is to burn with the items in the fire. So when it got to Achan by this point, he's talking to at least, one leader of the tribe. And when he got to Achan from the tribe of Judah, he said this in verse 19. Now Joshua said to Achan, my son, I beg you, give glory to the Lord your God of Israel, and make confession to him. And tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me. So through the rest he confesses. They bring him out of the Babylonian stuff, They brought him and the Babylonian stuff out. They stoned him and all his family and the items. They burnt him. They buried it with a rock, and they call it the Valley of Achor, which means trouble. And that's pretty much a way that we can wrap up chapter 7. Joshua's a really quick book. So then we get to Joshua chapter 8. Now in this chapter, this is the fall of Ai. It happens. Now they got rid of the items, and the favor was on their side again. The Lord talks to Joshua, saying, "Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed. Take all the people of war with you. The king is theirs. Do the same as you did to the king in Jericho. Take all the spoils and the cattle as treasure," depending of the version you're reading. Sometimes they call this booty, which is how they talked back then, was treasure, because you got to think King James Version, it was written around 1600, so it's kind of like pirates. So you got to think of it like that. So Joshua tells them of the things that will pass. Then when time comes to set the city on fire, Joshua next sets up the ambush with 5,000 men. They lie between Bethel and Ai. Now Joshua tricks them that they are fleeing as if they were beaten. Then the Lord tells Joshua to raise up his spear. As soon as he did, the men took the city and set it on fire. Now the people of Ai had nowhere to go, and the men of Israel who fled now turned around. They brought the king of Ai to Joshua. They destroyed all the people of Ai. They hanged the king, and they took him down that evening and put him in the gates of the burnt city and buried him on a heap of rocks. The reason why they took people down that hung, they wouldn't let them hang overnight, is because they felt that this was an accursed person to the Lord, so they wouldn't leave it hanging up overnight. Basically a short way I can break that down to you. If you want to know more, I can give you really a big, longer theological breakdown of why their belief, because it even goes down all the way to Jesus' time, why they took him down. But anyways, now Joshua renews the covenant with the people. Joshua at this time built an altar on Mount Ebal. So they stood at the two mountains we talked of in Deuteronomy, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. Joshua reads the book of law of Moses. He didn't leave a word out. They did all the things that Moses had commanded. And that is the end of chapter 8. Now, chapter 9. Chapter 9, so this chapter is a little different from what was going on. So they make a treaty with the Gibeonites at this time. But they were like a snake and had a crafty plan to pretend to be ambassadors. So they came to Joshua by this point, and they told him that they come from a far land, when really they were pretty much neighbors. The people of Israel asked, "How do we make a covenant with you?" Joshua asked, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "A very far place to serve your Lord God." They tell Joshua, "We have heard what your God did in Egypt. The king of Shion, king of Heshbon, and Ogog, the king of Bashan, they lie and say our elders told us to come far to meet you with provisions. But on the journey, our food molded, our wineskins tore, and our clothes are destroyed," when really they did all this themselves, guys. So basically this is where they're tricking them. We came really far, everything was tattered. Really wasn't. So the people of Israel gave them some provisions without coming to the Lord about this. This will pay later on down the road. Remember, he told them they would be crafty. So Joshua made a covenant with them. So then 3 days had passed, and they learned that they were neighbors. And the children of Israel traveled to them. They said, "We will let them live if no wrath comes on us for this oath." Joshua tells them, "Why have you deceived us, saying, 'We are very far from you,' when you dwelled near us? Now, you are cursed, and none of you shall be free." So they didn't kill them, but Joshua made them woodcutters and water carriers. So he pretty much made them work. So then to wrap up, part 2 is with chapter 10. This is the last part. Chapter 10. Now it had come to pass when the king of Jerusalem heard that Joshua had taken Ai and destroyed it, and Gibeon formed an alliance with Joshua. And they feared them because they were mighty. They were a lot more mightier than them, pretty much. So they got kings from the Amorites to come with them to Gibeon and attack them. The men sent word to Joshua, "Don't forsake your servant." So Joshua took people of war and mighty men of valor. They marched, and the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear, I have delivered them." They chased them all over, and the Lord casted a hailstorm, and more men died from the hail than by sword, it says in the Bible. Lord said, "Sun, stand still, and the moon." So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped. And it says, "It is not written," or is this not written in the book of Yasher? So it says, the sun stood still in the midst of heaven. There has never been a day like this. The sun stood still. The 5 kings fled afterwards and hid in a cave. So Joshua said, "Put a large stone at the mouth of the cave. But go after you, put a stone there, and pursue the rest of them, so that they don't enter our cities." So after they set the stone over the mouth of the cave, they pursued the rest of them. And then they all returned to Joshua. And then Joshua said, "Open the cave now, and bring the 5 kings to me." So then they executed them once they brought them to Joshua. And they hung them on the trees till evening, then put them in the cave where they hid. So they continued to go southland afterwards, and did the same, all that they did to Jericho, to the next place. So it speaks of king after king was defeated. It ends with they conquered the mountain country and the south and the lowlands and the wilderness slope. So this is the end of part 2 of this Bible study. Part 3 will be chapters 11 through 15. God bless you guys, and thank you for tuning in to this.